Cyber season is in full swing with our pals Isotope and Native Instruments.
Get huge discounts on everything from Guitar Rig 7,
Complete 14 bundles,
and one of our favorites here at the Cult and Culture Podcast,
Ozone 11 EQ. Go to isotope.com
and nativeinstruments.com
to feast on the audio goodness. Yum.
You can also get additional savings on other softwares by using the code
RUIN10.
DistroKid now also has a motherfucking app. The DistroKid app is available for iOS and Android. You can download it at distrokid.com/app/, or you can get it in the App Store.
The beginning is near. Now watch men disappear.
Hey, welcome to episode 12 of the Cult and Culture Podcast. I'm Justin Pearson.
And I'm Luke Henshaw.
And this episode has our friend Dave Scott Stone, who's been in a ton of interesting bands. And I have had the pleasure to work with him in the Locust. He was briefly in the Locust for a tour, which was a very inspirational point for, or a huge inspirational point for the Locust, as I think we kind of shifted some of the ways we write our songs. It was, yeah, so anyhow, he was in LCD Soundsystem, Melvins, Get Hustle. He worked with Jello and some sort of like kind of Dead Kennedys incarnation thing. What else? Unwound, did I say that? Anyhow, he's got an impressive resume, so it was cool to have him on the podcast, and I mean, he's just a rad dude and all the stuff he does, and like I'm pretty intrigued by his modular synth stuff that he does, and so anyhow,
we got to work with him.
What?
And we got to work with him.
Yeah, which is awesome. The stuff he writes is sick, so yeah, we're doing some stuff with Planet B and him, which is great. The podcast starts off kind of strange because I think like it seemed so natural. He kind of came in and sat down and we just started rapping about whatever. Like I don't even know what, like where we were headed, and then you pushed record and
yeah,
and then it was like
it happens a lot. Like so, the listeners know that it happens a lot. It's hard for us to just say, okay, start.
Yeah,
like everybody sits down where you're sitting and we just kind of
or stop. Hey, stop saying that.
Yeah, that one's a hard one. Yeah. That one's even harder than starting. But it's like, how do we know, like, when they sit down, they're comfortable, they say something interesting, I hit record regardless.
Yeah.
So there was no real intro with Dave.
Yeah. So, I mean, we kind of just dive into, like, a half part of, like, midway part of a piece of the conversation. But I guess you guys will figure it out once it gets started. But
and when we stopped, we kept talking, so I had to hit record again.
Yeah.
So it's like part 2.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the longest podcast we've done so far too, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to cover. I mean, even like if you think about like his interest in like music and music theory and stuff, or like his like the stuff he's done in the past, or I don't know. I mean, there's so many directions you could go with that guy, and we did end up going in most of them. And it's funny because as the conversation kept going, I kept thinking like, I gotta go back to this one thing that I wanted to talk about that we detoured away from.
And
so,
it does get really techie.
Yeah.
Might be hard to understand, but you'll get it once everyone hears his catalog. So.
Sure. Yeah, or you just Google whatever the hell he's saying, like the flex capacitor.
Sometimes I don't even know what he's saying, but when he explains it, I'm like, I got it.
You mean like the kind of synths, or like the
or the techniques and just the process of everything.
Yeah, but overall he's just such an awesome dude, and seems so positive and kind, and it's rad. So anyhow, I guess that's where we're headed with this. So get ready, and sorry for the abrupt start, but I think you guys will dig it once it starts up. So here it goes.
Yeah, I could see, him wanting to take Dead Kennedys material and just like taking it to another level.
Yeah.
But there was never any conflict.
Yeah.
I think it was just more like a timing issue.
Was Jello in those rehearsals? Were you in part of that or no?
Yeah, I was playing bass.
Okay.
Because Dale was on maternity leave.
And then it was just Jello singing.
Jello singing.
Yeah.
And Buzz and I think that was the time period, because I was in Melvins in 2 different cycles. I was a guitar player in 2000 through 2000, beginning of 2002. And then I came back when they needed a bass player. It was very clear to me that big business were joining them. But they were still living up in Washington. And it takes time for people to like change their life around and move to a big city. So it was going to take probably at least a year, and it wound up taking about 2 years. So I went in and played bass with them because we were doing Fantomas Melvins big band.
Oh yeah.
Again, we were doing some Melvins touring, and mostly like the art end of the Melvins sort of stuff, like doing live scores for Cameron and Jamie.
Oh yeah.
And some more of the heavier, dronier sort of stuff, like making things up while watching a film. And then
you weren't playing modular synth stuff then.
No,
with
well,
them.
no, I started because I got to work in Melvin's Fantomas big band. As you know, Mike Patton is a completely like, hey, we're all treated the same here. Really amazing dude, and very, very fair, and allowed me to start building a modular synth system. And because I was interested in that, because I was always into guitar effects pedals, and when I was playing in this old band Slug, which was a long time ago from LA, I was playing, it was 2 bass players, and I wanted a very guided silo sort of driving bass that had lots of effects on it. And that's why I loved what you were doing, like, because your use of effects, it was more like playing stuff. And then my friend Damon Romero, who was a harsh noise guy, who was the other bass player, because I would do tricks with I would use Y cables on some distortion boxes and turn them into like oscillators, getting them to feedback on themselves. And then Damien once said to me, and this was for like overdubs when we were doing our record, Damien said like, oh, you basically have a modular synth system. I was like, wait a second, you mean like those patch bay things?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, but you're just using effects pedals. And it started getting me into the headspace of looking into modular synthesizers, because I always like synths, but I like physical instruments like guitars and basses and just something like really to freak out with. And so, but it's in the late 90s, you're working a driver job. Modular synths were like a couple, maybe like $500, that's a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, this is late 90s, $500. Oh my God, I'll have to save months for that. And so I wasn't in really any space to do that. But then when I started, being in bands, that I would come home with some money from doing things, or, because after Slug, I played in the Get Hustle. And I started putting all my effects pedals on a music stand with an AB box. Yeah. So instead of like...
Well, you play guitar.
I was playing guitar in that because, I always like guitar stuff. And I actually consider guitar my main instrument. And, but, playing with like Mac and Maximilian and Valentine, we were just really into non-popular music. Yeah. And we're trying to find, it was a bunch of people trying to do very individual things that maybe, we weren't normally around. The way Mac played piano mixed with Maximilian's drums. It's like, okay, I don't want to do like Antioch era guitar playing. Or, so I got my Jaguar.
Which was kind of a weird time because I think everyone expected it to be Antioch era.
Oh, yeah. I think people were we were lucky that in San Diego, we had way better shows in San Diego off of the, Antioch sort of like community that they built over the years. And then we were just like a really, really, like, our influences were, well, obviously when you take away the whole Nick Cave, PJ Harvey thing that Mac and Valentine sort of had, Mac got really into Thelonious Monk, and would practice he would practice all day. He was so dedicated to it. It was so amazing. I was into sort of like things like Sonny Sharrock and like, skronky guitar sort of stuff. I mean, we came together with like sonically things like the birthday party, even though nothing we did sounded like them. And we had this powerhouse drummer that just really ripped it up. And then Andy Ward played with, or Mackie, Buzz's wife, was the first bass player. And then, you know, we wanted to get on the road, tour. She had her own life as a graphic designer, and she couldn't like jump in the van for 6 weeks, getting like, you know, if we're lucky, $100 a show. It just wasn't. But she was great, like the stuff that she did, and then, you know, she actually brought me into it. Then Andy Ward played with us, and he'd play.
But wasn't Aaron in it for a minute? Aaron.
Oh, okay, yeah. Before that, they had this thing, Bolero. Was that it? Was that
no, I thought he was in Get Hustle for like a minute.
No, they were him and Myra Power.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were. They had left the band that they were doing with those. It was Aaron, Myra, Mackie, Maximilian. Aaron and Myra moved to New York, and they bailed out on it. I thought it was called Tarot Bolero.
That was one of the bands that he had, but
or maybe no, it was something else. And they only played one show, and I saw it. And you know, Aaron was like crooning, and like he had changed from like a freak out thing to actually really wanting to learn how to sing.
Yeah.
And but they bailed, and then I started playing with them, and then we couldn't find a singer, and Valentine wound up playing with us. Yeah. So started singing with us, and we're just like, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, and that was it.
And that was it. And but yeah, all my effects pedals were on a music stand. That was my approach to it. It's like I get loops going, or like we were so pretentious, but you know, pretentious in a way of like we were trying to push envelopes rather than why be normal, you know? And you know, because I didn't. God, there's so many long stories. You know, this is gonna be edited, of course, but like,
wait, no, hell no. Should I hit record, by the way? When you're doing with the pedals, playing guitar, I mean, what was your technique on changing the effects on?
I mean, so you don't have to reach on the ground.
Yeah, well, there was that, but also I could like strum a chord, or do like a voicing, like a dissonant voicing. I had an AB box on the floor, so I really loved guitar into amp tones. Like I had a Super Reverb Jaguar at first, and then I bought a Jazz Master. Well, I put together from parts because Jazz Masters were like $400. You know, like 60s Jazz Master. Oh my God, $400. That's crazy. And so I built a Jazz Master later on from parts. And so I was working in an amp company. I used to work for Soldano, and I got some deal so I could buy effects pedals through the companies they work with, like Electro Harmonics, for free. So I had this deluxe Memory Man that still is like one of my favorite delays. It was the reissue ones. I think they sound better than the 80s ones, and better. There's like for one time, the middle period is actually, to me, the best sounding ones.
They probably had time to like work on it.
Yeah.
In 10 years or whatever, I would think.
Right. They push it. They lowered the noise floor. They kind of I don't know if they must have changed chips or something, but it is gorgeous sounding. And I started using that as an instrument. So I started. At first I had a Memory Man. And so I could play a really clean, piercing, like Jaguar Super Reverb guitar tone. And then I could press the AB box, send it up into the pedal that was on the music stand, so I didn't have to like hunch over. And while I'm holding the chord, I could bend it, like, or add the vibrato to it. Nice. And then I got, what else? Then I got... this is before. Now there's so many cool guitar effects pedals, but back then Z-Vex was like the cool new effects pedal, and I spent $200 or something on this thing called a Sequa, which was a sequencer like tone thing. And Bob Bruno, he was the only other guy that was really into pedals. And then I got like a micro synth, so I started building things up off of that. So then I got, there's the green Line 6 loopers. Yeah. And I would start making loops on that. Oh, the other thing, pitch shifter delay. which is like an Eventide H3000 in a box, or does that sort of that the Rainbow Machine Earthquaker does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So pitch
we were
shift.
just talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I had that, and I could create a loop.
Earthquaker again. We're trying to get sponsors.
Oh, they're the best people in the
They
world.
are,
Like
I
I'm actually
know.
shooting a video for them for the Swiss thing. Vice Cooler. Let's.
Yeah.
We can cut this part out where it's like, but actually, I hung out with my Crane the other day. I went to his studio, and I would have assumed, because you and Joey did videos for them.
Yeah.
And
With you.
oh, that is so crazy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
At your house.
Yes. That is so wild. My brain,
That's cool.
I used to smoke crops. I guess I'm never getting elected president now, but I mean, it's been 15 years since I touched that stuff. But no, when I saw the Interstellar thing, I thought, oh, they must have a bunch of Earthquakers.
No, we did a thing at NAMM 2 years ago for them, and like they are awesome.
Yeah.
I love
Party
them.
of Helicopters.
Yeah, I know, which is crazy too, because I didn't put two and two together until like they're like, you know them, and I was like, no, I don't think I do. And then like, yeah, Party of Helicopters, like, oh shit, like I played so many shows with them back in the day. But the data corruptor they modeled after the Schumann PLL, which I needed so bad, and that thing is falling apart.
Oh, yeah.
Which is another crazy piece of gear, because I bought that for $500 like a long time ago, and I was like, I remember like being in New York and being like, fuck, it's $500, and I had to borrow band fund. Everyone's like, dude, you're borrowing so much of our band fund, and I'm like, trust me, I need this thing, and like now I could sell it for $3,000, I guess.
That was an early conversation, because I was a pedal obsessive. Like, people that had interesting guitar effects pedals, I remember like being so envious because I knew about that pedal.
Yeah.
And I think I was really seeking out a 16-second delay, the 81 version, the looper one. Because I really like looper pedals that you can actually put sort of punch holes in. I could do that with the PS3. You get a loop, and then if you cut the delay time, it actually gets things choppy and sort of glitches them out. It's like making little edits in them.
Yeah,
and you can do the 16-second delay, but also things like microsynths, the sounds that the PLL pedal did, all that sort of. I never got those Line 6 purple boxes that you use, though. And you still use those?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I used two of them into each other.
Oh, okay. Oh, rad.
Because I started hearing like some of the sounds and other everywhere, like on car commercials and shit. I'm like, damn it. And back then, like when we were touring a lot, the Locust, Bobby and I were always breaking them, and he was using the delay one too, and so I bought a backup one, and I remember just having it on my pedal board because I was like, this one's. Because there's only 4 options, so like sometimes like only 2 of them would work, or like So I had 2, and I was like running one into the other, and I was like, oh, this is like another beast right here. Like no one's like stupid enough to double up on them. Like Mick Barr, how he runs through like 3 Metal Zone pedals, and you're just there's a fucked up
it's gain
sound.
staging. It's all sort of like one's, with the synth pedals, it's like you're filtering synth and all. Like, because I had the that Korg guitar synthesizer X911 that's modeled in that, but the Line 6 one, the pedal that you use actually tracks a lot better. So I was thinking about getting that, but at that point, after the sort of pedal thing, I started getting the synths. I could, after Melvins and working Melvins Fantomas big band, I was so, it's like, wow, I actually can like get the things that I've wanted to get into.
Yeah.
And, at this point, early 2000s, I came back from an Unwound tour. The world had totally changed because it was post 9/11.
Oh yeah. So wait, you were you on any Unwound records, or you just played live with them?
I played live with them, and then Justin edited together this record of our tour of all like the best parts of our set. Well, it's pretty much our set, but from different places. And it's called Live Leaves, because we were doing Leaves That Turn Inside You. And we were supposed to play in the Middle East with Ereban Radar on 9/11.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is always like, that's always like, obviously the show got canceled and all. But it was like with Thrones, Mechanormal, but Ereban Radar at the Middle East on 9/11.
The Middle East is a venue in
Yes,
Boston. Yeah,
yes,
not
it's
the Middle East.
not the
but
Middle
yeah.
East.
Yeah.
But yeah, the world had changed, and and I was living above my friend's garage for $200 a month. I didn't have a car, but I started buying like modular synth pieces.
Yeah.
And
But you were also playing in Unwound.
well, Unwound was over, and that money I gotta say it's doing Melvins Fantomas big band work and working with Jello that allowed me to have a good chunk of change to reinvest into music stuff, because my needs weren't really like, beyond making music and all, which
I mean, a lot
I don't
of
know
us,
if that was a great life plan.
yeah. You learn how to live below the poverty line.
Oh yeah.
And figure out. But I mean, for me, I remember when I was like, holy shit, Dave's in Unwound. Like, I mean, I guess like to me, Unwound seemed like at the time like it was so like when Gravity put out that Unwound 7, I was like, what? You're putting it like it was almost like they were like putting out a Nirvana record or something. So I kind of felt like shit. Dave's in like playing in that band. Like that seems insane to me, But and that was rad. But I would love to talk more about your thing with Jello, because that's kind of crazy too. Like, was that just because of your affiliation with the Melvins that you started working with him?
Yeah.
And did it go beyond that project? Was it like another Jello thing?
Buzz, Dale, and Kevin, that incarnation of the Melvins, Buzz, he'd been doing the band for a long time. He asked me to start playing with them on a boat back from Alcatraz after January 1st, 2000. I'd gone to see them play at the Great American Music Hall because they were doing some sort of big 2000 celebration and all. And I didn't even have, I was doing Get Hustle. And we just did this record for 5RC. We just recorded with Tim Green.
Yeah. The one with the giraffe on the cover?
Yeah,
right?
Earth Odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
And, I did not see it coming, but Buzz was like, hey, would you like to go do a tour with us? I was
on bass or?
No, he was, I kept on thinking, you mean like Get Hustle? Like, I'm sure Get Hustle would love to go on tour with you. And Buzz was... and then he was like, no, I want to do something different. I want to mix things up. It's always been Dale, him, Buzz, and whatever bass player they're playing at the time. And they just done the trilogy records, and Buzz just wanted to mix things up. He knew I didn't play like Buzz. I could play actually I can't play like Buzz, but I could do rhythm guitar if Buzz wanted to solo.
Sure.
But Buzz gave me free reign to do whatever I wanted to do. He wanted an extra layer of noise because I was also really in the harsh noise scene, contact mics, tabletop electronics, feedback mixers, all that sort of stuff. And so Buzz wanted an extra layer of noise in the Melvins. And I mean, sometimes I would do Melvins riffs, and then Buzz would solo over it because it would make sense and all. But I kind of could do whatever I wanted to. And practices went well. I didn't think I could do it because I didn't feel like I didn't have the confidence to do it. But we practiced for 6 weeks, and then Melvins, because Get Hustle was also putting a record out at the same time. Melvins and Get Hustle were going to tour together. And so I was going to go do 4 weeks with Melvins, and then Get Hustle was going to join us for the second 4 weeks, and we were going to I was going to play in Get Hustle, and then I was going to play with Melvins. I'll get to the Jello story in a second.
Yeah.
But everyone else in Get Hustle wanted to move to Portland, and it kind of like I went on tour with Melvins, and when I came home, they weren't in Los Angeles anymore.
Whoa.
No, it wasn't like that.
Oh.
Valentine called me and said, hey, listen, we're moving to Portland, and we're going to do the band. You should, I'm glad you're playing with the Melvins. Keep doing that. We want to try something else.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's what's, young bands, we're all, I was they were in their early mid 20s. I was in my mid to late 20s. So there was a bit of an age difference between us all. And that's just what happens in bands, And then they moved up to Portland and became more keyboard based, and they got way better.
When
Mark, they became awesome.
Mark joined.
Yeah. Get Hustle without it turned into an incredible band.
Yeah.
You know, I love the layer Galso stuff. But so yeah, I kept on playing with them for a while, and then when I went to go play with Unwound, Buzz loved that Jello Biafra went up against the PMRC, or what is Tipper Gore's thing. And Buzz really loved that about Jello. And he had to go through that. And he loved the Dead Kennedys. Ultimately, he loves the Dead Kennedys music.
I mean, they're one of the best punk rock bands ever, musically.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like they played, you put them up against the Sex Pistols or the Misfits or whatever, and it's like they're fucking way better players.
Yeah, so...
Wait, so Melvins went through PMRC stuff?
No, they didn't.
Oh, he just appreciated it.
He, saw what Jello went through, and also the Dead Kennedys getting back together again without Jello. And, Buzz was like, he likes Jello. I mean, they lived in San Francisco for a while. They've known each other for a long time. And so when I was playing with Unwound, I disappeared into the Northwest for an adventure up there. They did a record with Jello. Then they started touring it. They played a bunch of shows together. And
because he did the No Means No one, like Jello did.
Yeah,
He would just join bands.
He's done collaborations, but Jello actually writes songs. He can play rudimentary guitar and write music, and he did that, from what my understanding, with a lot of DK stuff. And so they collaborated. They wrote this record. Kevin wasn't playing with them anymore. They wanted to tour it. So when I was playing bass, I was doing Klaus Fluoride's bass lines, which were fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't think I had the confidence to figure it out.
Which is funny, to not harp on not to focus on the Dead Kennedys thing, but there was a point where he was putting his new band Guantanamo School of and so I remember Jose Palafox from Swing Kids. They wanted him to play, and he was just like, "Fuck, this stuff's harder than I thought." We just grew up thinking oh, it's punk rock, It's like, and he was like, "This is," and that guy's a pretty ripping drummer, and he was just like, "Dude, it's really complicated, drum wise, It's like, huh? And so then I started thinking about it. I'm like, everything's pretty top notch. But
I think a lot of San Francisco bands, there's sort of a musicianship. There's you listen to a lot of things on Alternative Tentacles, which I haven't really listened to in years. I'm into house and techno now. I get a little bit of delight saying that because it's so ridiculous, but I think there's that's where my ears hear with music.
Well, that makes sense too, because we can jump to that point. But even when you started working with LCD Soundsystem, there's such a vast mix of stuff going from Get Hustle to that.
I know.
But so I would love to hear about.
We could everybody, all of us here who would have thought that you're doing something. Well, you've played. Again, in this lifetime, you and I have to be in a band together at some point.
We were. What do you mean?
No, that was Locust and stuff like that. We have to figure a project out.
Okay, but you know what? You were a huge influence on the Locust.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, stop.
No,
that.
I mean, not to, because I still want to keep talking about the Jello thing. But so the Locust were asked to play this festival, and it was right when we kind of started playing, getting more, a little bit more, recognition or whatever, and the festival was you have to play for 45 minutes, and we're like, fuck that, 45 minutes is too long, we don't even want to play that long, and I remember us kind of just I don't even know how we internalized it, but we were we had 45 minutes worth of material, but we were just no, we're not gonna bring back those old shitty songs. Everyone wanted to hear the crap from the GSL records or whatever. Yeah. And so we were no, let's just get Dave in our band and just make our set a lot longer and have the Thunder Sheet and weird interludes, because a thing that we were struggling with was playing live and having everybody come and heckle us, and we're this is fucking lame, because we want to play music and not have to just talk shit back to people. And so the whole thing was how do we redefine this performing, and it was okay, well, let's bridge every song together and have this thing. And so it was crazy so the next thing we put out was Safety Second Body Last, which has huge soundscape pieces, which you kind of steered us in that direction.
I don't know about that. I mean, everyone had, and it's okay, when I first saw the Locust, because you see different transitions and all, I'm going to see Unwound and Godhead Silo, Carp, Bikini Kill Rock Stars sort of stuff. And I find out about the San Diego scene. I wasn't hip to things like Unbroken, but I was hip to Antioch, Clickatat, Heroin, bands from that sort of time.
Which kind of were part of the Unwound, like hip kind of like LA thing. Like Unbroken and stuff like that was like part of like straight edge hardcore, which was a different world. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it mixed in San Diego, but outside of San Diego, it was like not.
Well, yeah. And I remember there was definitely this sort of thing where, I saw Swing Kids, because that was all sort of like the new blood of San Diego.
Yeah.
And then the Locust came up. I remember going to see it's like, wow, these guys are, okay, because Godzilla Unwound is very tuneful. And then Ulysses comes around, and it's a total freak out. San Diego, then, Antioch Arrow is just an explosion. And then you see Locust, and it's like, oh my God, these guys are really heavy. They're really like tough guys. Like because early the 5-piece Locust,
yeah.
I really thought you guys were like tough guys. Like it was kind of like scary in a weird way. Like
And doing a record with Man as a Bastard kind of has that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I knew Joey and stuff like that because he from booking the library.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got like, and also my background with hardcore too is hardcore, mid to late 80s when I was a kid. It was the jocks that would like beat up
totally.
guys. Like hardcore was not like an arty, like fun, inclusive stuff. It was more like the guys, like Black Flag. I didn't get into Black Flag until after Big Black, because there's guys with the Black Flag t-shirt with the mohawks and the football helmets on the playing field.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be around that. Skateboarders too, it was like, it was weird, that culture that became like very progressive and kind of more on the arty end, in Sun Valley where I grew up, it was like, the scary guys. Like I want to get away from that sort of stuff.
That's weird, because when I was growing up, there was so many obstacles. Because there was like in San Diego, there was a big neo-Nazi issue, and so we were like, pretty much anything that wasn't a neo-Nazi was like cool. We're like, all right, and so like that's why you could go see like Heroin, the band, play with Unbroken, and it was like it made sense, But if you left San Diego, there was this show that happened in Los Angeles. It was Clickatat, Slant Six, Unbroken, and Undertow, and it was like. Everybody in the bands thought it would make sense. The crowd fucking did not think it was cool, and I'm like, that makes sense to me, but I guess it doesn't.
LA is much more segregated. I was at that show, and I didn't know the two of the bands.
Yeah.
I knew Clickatat, I knew Slant Six, because
everybody was just shitty to each other. Not necessarily in the bands, but like just the crowd. It was like, fuck, man. I'm friends with all these bands. This is cool as hell. This is 4 cool ass bands, but like the people were not psyched.
Well, I like that time period too. I remember. I don't mind saying this for the record. I never really liked Jawbreaker. They were always like the good, clean.
I never liked them either.
They were like the good, clean guys that you could take home to mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I never like got it.
Yeah. But there was that show with Jawbreaker headlining with Clickatat and Slant Six down here. It was like a big, because I would come down to shows all the time at the Shea, like several times a month to see bands, even though I lived in Los Angeles. And
I would never want to play a show with Clickatat because of Mario. It's just like, fuck, this guy is so ripping.
So good.
You could never. At that time, there was nobody else as good as that band because of his drumming, and I was like,
yeah. I really hope he has a sort of John Theodore trajectory and ends up in like some big band. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like, I would just, because he was a paradigm shift with drumming in sort of the scene and the culture. It was so rolling and just big, but really focused, and like, he was amazing.
Yeah.
He was when I started getting the sampling, I tried to like sample Brooks and Mario.
Oh yeah.
But there's just sound quality. It's really hard,
sure.
Like to do, but I know I'm not the only one that's tried to sample that UOA.
Yeah.
Such a great drum riff.
Someone sampled it somewhere.
I heard it too. They're much cleverer than I could think about things, But that was like just that, drums as a hook.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We're just rambling on about good old times.
I want to. So the Jello thing. I mean.
Oh, Jello. Yeah.
Because Dead Cross played and we did Nazi Punks Fuck Off with him, and it was. I mean, I've met Jello a bunch of times over the years. We were on part of these like record label panels and at these things that like music, you know, I don't know, where they had like live bands, and then you could go hear this panel of these people, and like I was always kind of shocked when you'd be like, oh yeah, you know, Justin from the Locust, or like talking about like Sonny K and GSL, and I'm like, how do you know this shit? Like I just figured he didn't know, but he did, and I was like, okay, this is cool. But when we did the song with them, it was like, this is pretty fucking surreal for me. I mean, it's pretty surreal to play in Dead Cross, but also like on top of that, like here's the dude like doing it, you know. And then it was weird to like there was like a shitload of backlash. I think people were just like, fuck that, you know, keep the politics out of punk and like or whatever. And I'm like, I mean, there wouldn't be a lot of shit if Dead Kennedys didn't exist, like, you know. And so it was kind of weird. But I mean, so the thing that you were doing, did it ever come out as like were you like? Because they did that, Melvins.
They did a record together. I think there's there might have been a live recording of that.
And then did you play in Guantanamo School of...
No, I never... Jello asked me, you know, to do some stuff, but I kind of got more into the synth thing. That would have been probably around the time when, you know, I did that tour with you guys. It was around Katrina.
Maybe. But he also... I remember they were, like, getting a band together, and they were trying to get, like, Andy Coronado.
I think... Oh, no, Andy played with the Melvins for a little bit, right? He was doing something with... Oh, no, he was playing bass in the Jello Biafra Melvins project.
Okay.
And that was probably about 2008, 2009. And Andy, perfect guy to do it. You know what I mean? Two Geminis, Jello and Andy. You know, Kanye. You know, they say very inflammatory things. You know, Morrissey, Bob Dylan, Trump. You know, like all Gemini, Svenonius.
Wow.
You know?
Wow, you just fucked up everyone by throwing Trump into the mix.
I
mean, he is.
I know.
I'm just glad he's not a Leo. Jesus,
oh
thanks.
God, yeah.
Which he seems like he'd be one. He seems like he's got it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, we're probably preaching to the choir.
Sure.
Yeah, but I really sucked the air out of the room by that. But, anyways, yeah. I don't know if any of that stuff. I think probably it was released live and all. But yeah, I forgot how many shows we played. Some big festivals over in Europe. You know, the whole like it was probably like a metal punk
with
hybrid.
Jello.
Yeah.
Doing the Dead Kennedy songs.
Well, it was Jello.
Melvins.
We were doing songs from that record that they did. I think we were probably doing Halo of Flies, the Alice Cooper song, and a bunch of Dead Kennedy songs.
And so, what was Gabe gonna do when they were talking to Gabe about playing? Just replace Dale?
Because I think Dale was on maternity leave.
Okay.
You know,
wow.
And that would have been fun. But
I remember him like rehearsing for it, and we were like, "Oh, this is so cool."
Yeah, because it would have been. I mean, you know, I've also been lucky to play with so many great drummers too. You know, and he's really one of the best. You know, I mean, he's someone that's just like fucks up my brain about like how he does that. Like I don't understand it. You know, it's like a few years ago, I bought a drum kit, which was the final frontier for me. That's the only thing that I can't, you know. And, you know, the only drummer I'm referencing is Pat Mahoney from LCD. So it's all, you know, just 4-on-the-floor disco. Because I want to sync up, like, 909s with it.
Sure.
And all. And it's, you know, it's like I can't get my head around that. But once you actually start playing an instrument, you can understand things better.
Yeah. But
still, he's a very, very special. Like, I remember the people, like, mid-2000s, people that were held in the highest esteem were, why I'm spacing out on, John Theodore, he's one.
Who I would love to play with.
He's so good.
Yeah.
And the best dude ever.
I know. Yeah.
What
like Zach Hill.
Zach.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, of course, Zach.
Yeah.
Greg from Deerhoof.
Oh yeah.
Gabe. Lightning Bolt.
Brian Chippendale.
Yeah. I mean, those guys were like, you know, I mean, mid-2000s was interesting. It felt more like the early 80s where every band had a very strong individualistic style for what they were doing. It was almost like, you know, you think of like early 80s post-punk. And then it kind of happened again with all the variations and how strongly different. Because now, I hear a lot of bands and they're all like one, there's a lot of shoegazery stuff and then sort of like really pop punky garage stuff, and like it changes every season. But I'm seeing less things that have an individual identity. It's like Liars sounded nothing like Wolf Eyes.
Oh yeah.
And
but Liars is a good example because they kind of, I love their first record, but it was it was a lot more typical than they got to be. It like took this path of, I don't know where the fuck they were going.
First record?
From the first record to now, it's just like
a
whole. I mean, it's like Black Dice too. Like just like this evolution that's two completely different bands.
Yeah, We Were Wrong, So They Drowned was my favorite record from 2000 to 2000. I love that record. It felt like all of my favorite bands all at once.
Yeah.
And Drums Not Dead's really, really great. I follow them throughout their they're just they have the support and love from Daniel Miller to do, it's like from Mute, it's like, you guys, something special, do whatever you want.
Yeah. But now it's just Angus. Yeah, which is kind of a trip too.
Yeah. I mean, I love those guys.
Yeah.
I
mean, Aaron's from San Diego.
Oh yeah.
He's a Chula Vista guy.
I think he's living in Berlin now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, they were just really, really great band. Still doing cool stuff. Really pushing things.
That new record's great too.
Yep.
So I want to hear about like where was this transition to modular synth stuff? Because at some point what were you doing in LCD Soundsystem?
I was playing guitar, and that was way after the fact. I'd been doing modular. Joey and I started getting into modulars independently at the same time because Joey is, the dexterity that all you guys have in Locust, it's just phenomenal. Everyone like amazing players. And
the two of you guys performing together though was fucking awesome.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really liked. I mean, I would love to I wish we could go back. I mean, I recorded some stuff on one of those old Roland digital recorders that I wound up getting rid of. They were so difficult.
I have a recording from the Che. It's great. I would love to put it out someday, but
yes,
I'll give it to you, and you can talk to Joey because I don't think Joey wants to, but it's really good.
I know. Joey's very high standards, as you know, and I respect that. But I would love to hear that again.
Yeah.
I know Wes really wanted to put something out too, and we were.
This is the same recording.
Yeah.
Because Sal from Some Girls recorded it.
Oh, okay.
Because we did those shows, Some Girls, and you guys played with us.
And then we played Chain Reaction with you, and No, I love playing with Joey. I love talk. I mean, Joey and I still talk, regularly about like things we're into and all. I mean, I was always more until I got my Wurlitzer. I was more just a knob twister and all. But my interest in modular synth came out of my last run with Melvin stuff.
We're gonna pause for that knob twister thing.
Yeah,
such a great name. Bad name.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like people that can really play synths and all. Joey's one of those guys. I was just making sounds and trying to get into the synthesis that he knows how to do as well. He's very deep into it. And so the modular stuff is okay. I worked with the Melvins and did Melvins Fantomas stuff for a bunch of shows. Got super well sorted out with that project. Like, oh my god, like I was used to having like donuts in my bank account. Zeros. And I wanted to reinvest into music stuff. I wasn't ready to get a studio or build a studio yet, but I was working at a microphone company called Royer Labs, building like ribbon microphones after 9/11. So after Unwound, building ribbon microphones, I'm living in Pasadena above someone's garage, my friend's garage. It was actually really nice. It's really peaceful out there.
Living above a garage is better than living in a garage.
It's true. It was like an A-frame thing. And it was really, I had like, I look out the window and there was like parrots, the Pasadena parrots out there. But I was taking the bus, or the Gold Line had just opened up, so I was taking the bus to and from work in the valley, building the microphones. And I went to the NAMM show. And I checked out the Voyager, which was brand new. I went, wow, this is incredible. I had some synthesizers, but nothing like fancy. I was used to the Moog Concermate, the Radio Shack one, and
which is like, I mean, that's like it was like kind of meant to be a toy, I think.
Yeah, but they sounded great. I mean, they were the sound of so many.
That was what got the Locust into using synths, was that thing.
The Concermate, yeah.
I thought it was called it's a realistic
MG1.
Yeah,
the MG1, yeah. MG1.
But it was sold at Radio Shack and it was really cheap, and that was the jam.
And you could find them in thrift stores, literally $35, $40. Like Bobby and
I found one for $75, and that was like, we just were like, this is so much money, but we need this for our band, and that was what changed everything.
Yeah. I mean, they're really cool. I mean, that deserves actually a reissue. The organ stuff, even though it's got the cool synth, but all the other things that it has are really cool too, and very underrated. But yeah, so I saw the Voyager. I went, wow, this is amazing. I felt like very inspired by this instrument, and I hadn't felt that way since I built my Jazzmaster. My Jazzmaster made me want to actually learn how to play the guitar rather using it as a sounding instrument, and like actually figure out what a scale was, and just like the basic stuff that everyone else figured out that I did in reverse, because it was all the extended technique sound sort of stuff. And then so I found out companies do artist deals, and I was like, I'm never going to get it. But, if you see these people that are representing, like, it's some band that you never heard of, like, there'll be an advertisement for some sort of, like, effects pedal. Yeah. And some dude in some band you never heard of, And so the guy who ran Roy,
never heard of them because no one knows who they are, because they're huge, but we just like
no, I think it's more like they're people that just are really savvy with like they look they look the part. I mean, you get some guy that looks like Vince Neil, but you don't know, and he probably does look like that and all, but he's in a band that should have dried up after Nevermind. So Rick, who ran Royer, was just like, hey, you know what? There's this thing called artist consideration deals. Why don't you talk to Moog and just say, hey, listen, I've just been playing with the Melvins. I played with Mike Patton and Dave Lombardo. Yeah. Because I hate doing that stuff. The promotion stuff. It's
pretty annoying.
It's really, really annoying. So for the first time ever, I wrote Moog for anyone. I wrote them a message, and painfully put out my credentials out there.
Now it's on Wikipedia. You could just send them the link.
Yeah. And they wrote back to me, and they said, oh, you certainly qualify for what you've done before. And it was much cheaper. And I wasn't trying to get free stuff. Yeah. Not for a second. I was trying to, someone like Trent Reznor, I'm sure, gets that sort of stuff. But
which is crazy, because I mean, Trent's cool and stuff, but like, he's got the money to buy that shit. Like they should be hooking up us.
But it was I saved a bunch of money on it, and they sent me a Voyager. And although I was into synths, I had a JX3P from the 80s. That was one of the first instruments I ever got, one of the Roland JX3Ps, and I knew a little bit about synthesis, but I swear I read that manual back and forth, which is one of the most, if you want to learn about synthesis, that the Moog Voyager manual is one of the best written manuals of all time. It really explains what what an LFO does, or how an ADSR works, or how you can modulate with a noise signal, and what's the difference between white and what's pink. It's phenomenal. Wow. And it's not like with those Roland manuals that are just like, oh my God, pick up the TB303 manual. It's like, oh my God, it's so rough.
So where does like an IKEA manual fit into that?
God. Yeah, I mean, I think the IKEA manual, it's very similar to like the, have you seen the instruction booklet for any of the what do you call it? Teenage operators. Like they do like the OP1 and those little. They look those manuals. It's very Scandinavian, maybe.
Yeah, sure. It's funny because I try not to. I just don't like manuals at all, and so I'm just like, what do I do? And then I kind of dicked around with Joey's Moog a little bit when he got it, but I was, it wasn't my gear, but I thought like, oh, maybe so rad. Like if I had this just to like not have I would just try to figure it out. I mean, that's same with like any kind of effects pedals. I mean, I remember like, I don't know, like the Line 6 to those like M13 ones or M16 or whatever they're called. And it's like all of the Line 6 pedals in one. Yeah. And like,
those really big boards.
Yeah. And the manuals kind of sucked. And it's like, I feel like if you just kind of approached it without that, you can kind of discover cooler shit where like, it kind of like ingrains this way of like writing and don't why would you have like all 4 settings to run through 4 purple Line 6 pedals that they're not going to tell you to do that, but you should fucking do that because then it's like insanely weird and like you may make something that's like really interesting. But that's the thing is like I don't know, like maybe less explanation is good.
I get through like 3 pages of every manual that I go through, and then I'm like, I pretty much get I learn more from the table of contents and just familiarizing myself with the words.
Yeah.
And then learning like the NPC. I'm like maybe page 4.
Yeah.
That's the farthest I've gotten. This. So the manual, I have the manual here. And like you can see the first 3 pages.
SP1200, by the way.
Yeah, SP1200. Yeah, and you see like the fingerprints on, but the other 47 pages, nothing clear white.
Yeah.
The sub 37, this is very difficult for me, but my son knows how to do it. So over the weekend he came down and we just sat in the studio. He was just showing me how to use it, and I learned more, and then we're just experimenting. It's just like the manual.
No, I totally feel you on that about sort of intuitive exploration, and also like doing things wrong can create or like amazing accidents.
Sure.
I mean, Get Hustle was completely built on like failed attempts making hopefully interesting.
Yeah, sure.
But
or like Black Dice, I feel like they kind of did that too. They, like they didn't really know, like the reference points were so skewed, and you just kind of make something up.
Well, I was completely with you with about not knowing about what things did, but there's something about the Voyager that made me want to explore synthesis, so I would know how to do things with it, so I could like. Instead of like blindly doing something, I wanted to be able to work intuitively and instinctually. So if I heard something or I felt something, I could go to that knob and move it to something. And trying to cut down any sort of, space between the thought and the action and just being able to go into it. And there was something about like, and then moving into the thing that got me into modular synthesis was all the jacks on the back of the Voyager. Because once I found out what CV was, which up until then I didn't know anything about because I didn't read any manuals about what CV does, or I didn't know the difference between MIDI and CV, and I was never interested in MIDI. Like there was something that No, I'm not there anymore. I use it all the time, but it's just a tool. But the whole idea about like electrical pulses being, sending 5 volts to something and it causing an A to come out, and then sending 5.2 volts out and a B coming out or whatever. And there was something very organic about like electricity not being consistent, and there being subtle variations in like sound and all. I mean, you're going to get that, but analog synthesis, it just seemed much more natural. I don't know. I got really, a few times in my life, I got really inspired by something, and I totally get the whole thing. And I subscribe to like just fucking around and finding something better that some schooled person's not going to get, and that's why I love having people coming over to my studio. And because when I built my studio, I have everything set up so everyone can work intuitively and have fun and not have to know how to do anything. But me kind of like guide them and throw them into this room where they can like explore stuff without knowing it, and me capturing it like without them knowing things. That's really important to me and all. But but now at this point, it's like me knowing about this stuff, I can be more of service and help people do things more. But yeah, the Voyager, I wanted to control an analog delay with my finger so I could get things to oscillate with the XYA control in the middle of the Voyager. So I got this company called Blasset. They were building these frac rack kits, and I thought they were really interesting and weird modules because the Voyager is very straightforward. LFOs, it's not so weird. It's very standard in a synthesizer. But mixing modular synth pieces with the Voyager that interact with the Voyager, I could expand upon the normal, basic, but great sound that the Voyager has. I could add...
But you can also import. Right? Couldn't you import like because when Joey would run his modular patch bass into his Voyager, so you're sort of importing these other elements to it, like
exactly. Yeah. I figured out that I could send by pressing a note. Okay, with the analog delay, I could hook it up to the Voyager and run it into the external audio in. So I could send a note into an analog delay that was feeding back into itself, then run it back into the Voyager, and I could use the keys to change the speed of the delay and almost use a self-oscillating delay as a melody.
Oh yeah.
It's like
that. Sure.
When I figured out I could do that, I was like, oh my God, modular synths rule. It's like I got that started it. It was really the Blasset Time Machine. I had to get the I/O module first just to start things off, but the Blasset Time Machine started me with modular stuff. And because I had jobs like soldering things before, I bought the parts and the board, soldered up. It was much, if that's $300.
Because the one that you toured with in the Locust, you built.
Yeah.
And I remember Joey was inspired by that and then built a giant one too.
Well, I was using smaller stuff, the frac rack stuff.
Okay.
And Joey was again excited about modular stuff too. He bought his Voyager, and that Joey and I totally came up together with all this stuff. And he, without a doubt, because I use the 5U system, Joey inspired me to get that because I was using frac rack stuff. Because I thought the module was a little bit more wild. And Joey got turned on this guy, Paul Schreiber, who does MOTM. And they're 4U, excuse me, they're 5U quarter inch. They seem to integrate really well with the Voyager. And I thought the modules were really, they weren't as wild as the Blasset stuff. So I bought some faceplates that would match the 5U ones. I converted my frac rack stuff, which is smaller and closer to like the super popular now Eurorack stuff, to 5U, so I could get all the Blasset weirdo modules, which aren't really weird by modular standard today, but back then. And then, but yeah, other than a few modules that are digital modules that they didn't offer kits for, I built about 40 of the modules, 40 of the 45 modules I have. I have more modules than like space in my thing I play shows with. I have a bunch in the closet and all. When I want to change things up, I just put them in there. Excuse me, I'm burping. But yeah, I mean, it was super fun. And then I don't know. Synthesis opened up a whole new world of exciting ways of approaching music. It had all the power and blast off characteristics of harsh noise metal, because all my early modular synth stuff was more like power electronic stuff.
Sure.
And I wasn't trying to be like noisy or anything like that, but I just wanted like loud, pure tones and all. You know, flicking a switch and all of a sudden having a digital white noise generator that was slowed down and just like, it could be so loud and so ferocious and all. And then mixing of the electroacoustic instruments that I, you know, contact mics with wires on it, or the thunder sheet with a contact, you know, mixing those two elements and just putting together like a weird set and all.
Sure.
But,
like,
know,
so that would be more like a live performance.
Yeah. Because I didn't really record the stuff because...
Which we used the contact mics and the thunder sheet and the Locust. I mean, that was great. Like, I remember like in those parts, like just standing still and like just you going over to Gabe's drums and like have these contact mics and like you guys doing some shit together. I mean, it made it very theatrical. And of course the thunder sheet was like very theatrical, this big shiny metal thing that you're just destroying.
And that was me going against a lot of like harsh noise people at the time that would just stand at a table and not do anything.
Yeah.
I think, and there's something about the physicality of it. Like if you shake it very subtly, you're not getting a big sound. But if you really get into it and throw yourself into it, it comes out there. Me putting the contact mic on on Gabe's drums, which I used to do with Dale too. I remember I would open up Melvins sets and I would just sit on Dale's drums with two contact mics, and I would get the drums to feedback, and then I would make loops of it. So I'd make a feedback drum kit and all, which. Definitely not the first person to do that. But I think for a lot of people had not seen that before. Sure. But at the same time, I wasn't ripping anything off because I just wasn't aware of it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like most of the contact mic stuff was, you know, people, you know, putting in a tin can and shaking around like Masana style. Masana style.
Or Merzbow, right? Did he do it too?
Merzbow, yeah.
Maybe not.
His tabletop stuff, he had this thing that I remember when he could play in front of like 20 people in LA. Not like play the Regent now with Prurient or anything. But I remember Damien booked Merzbow's show at this club down the street from Mike Crane's rehearsal space downtown called $50. I don't know. It was a very LA thing, but they do harsh noise shows, and I watched Merzbow play in front of like 30 people maybe. Wow. And there were like people that like the insane and noisy rock stuff. But yeah, he had this sort of, it looked like a spring reverb. He had some sort of contact or some sort of miking thing, and then tabletop pedals and multiple amps that he borrowed from all the noise people and like noise rock people in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
And it was great. I mean, it was so loud and stuff like that. But also, I didn't want to do that. I like the space because I want chaos, and chaos is in the regeneration of things, you know, as you feed back through things. It's like one cycle of, you know, contact mic resonating against a paper cup, you know, or a wire and all as it goes through there and continues to go. And that's where you get the chaos of it and all. And that's why it's like, to me, it was very... Harsh noise was like free music and all.
But also harsh noise, I think you kind of cut off you limit yourself with like texture. And I think that's my kind of bigger gripe, because like I like a lot of the stuff that like Trogotronic pedals do because there's texture to it. It almost sounds like rubbery, or like there's, you know, like, or wet, or like there's something to it, where like a lot of noise stuff is just harsh, piercing, abrasive stuff. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think newer people like who are making pedals or instruments, they're aware of like not pristine sort of sounds and all. I mean, a lot of times back in the day, like harsh noise people were just using what was available. So it was like Boss pedals.
Yeah.
So you're working within like Boss's design limitations and all. And now people are making pedals. You know, I saw this one pedal that I'm kind of bummed because I always had this idea too. It was like a contact mic with a circuit in it. So it was almost like a reverb tank for the pedal. So you'd play something, it would excite the contact mic in there. The contact mic would work as a speaker, and then another contact mic would go back into it. So it was almost this sort of like, it would just be really, really noisy and all. And there'd be no way of actually, every time you play it, it'd be whatever, room acoustics, where it's sitting, how hard you hit it and all. But like people are doing much more interesting things. And but I've never been a designer sort of person. To me, I built things because to save money, and I could do the things I want. I'm not a designer. There's people like Raina Rusum who plays synth and LCD, and she designs sort of some ideas with like electronics and all. And
so how did your approach to LCD work then? If you were playing guitar, I mean, you had all this knowledge of synth, or modular synth.
Because LCD is really James's thing. And James Murphy came from our world. He knows who the Locust is.
Sure, yeah.
He used to do...
I mean, he had that Losing My Edge song, and it references, like, everything that we grew up listening to.
Exactly. He's part of the culture and the scene. If you look at the DFA logo with the lightning bolt, it looks very much like the K logo. And there was something about that. And James had toured with Long Hind Legs, which is Vern Rumsey's band, and Fits of Depression in his old bands. And what he did was basically take that DIY sensibility, and instead of using Pacific Northwest references like K or Kill Rock Stars did, he took New York references, which was like dance music, disco, and did his, it's a very insular world of people. I mean, and it gets interesting because this is where the Rapture come in, who were from San Diego. And moved to Seattle, and then they end up in New York and all. But I mean, the early thing, like Justin Chernow, who Panthers, I think he was. Took James to go see the Rapture and all, and James was like, "Oh, I'm starting a label. I want to produce you guys." And so he's not really unrelated. He's very much related, which I didn't know about at the time, because Tyler Pope, who was in Chick Chick Chick, was the bass player for the band. So he was doing Chick 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 and LCD. And evidently James went to see Chick 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 and went, that guy's going to be my bass player one day, Because James had played in like indie rock bands. He was a bouncer at City Gardens, because he's like he's actually a really big dude. But you might not think of it, but he knew what was up.
Yeah.
And he was also he's got an amazing ear. He has that passion about learning. I guess he wrote Steve Albini when he was a kid, and because he loved Big Black, like we all did. And Steve Albini wrote him back and told him how to build a little home studio at his mom's house or something. It's really amazing. And so he was also obsessed with recording, playing in bands. He's a great drummer. And he started, after he produced The Rapture and started doing remixes for bands, he started making some LCD music, and the dude can do everything on his own. It's not unlike a Nine Inch Nails situation.
Okay.
But instead of, taking a major label money and then hiring hotshot people that you don't know, he hired these people that were around him that were like out of college and like, we're working at the coffee house, or we're carpenters.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be around the people that he knew were like talented friends and all. Like Pat was in La Savi Fav, is how you say it? Yeah. And Nancy was Nancy's only been in Luan McLean and LCD Soundsystem.
Okay.
But it's like he hired his friends that were out of college. He's so DIY, and it's weird because there's such a massive band at this point. So because they're so insular, and like they could, when the guy who had been playing guitar with them before, he's also in this band Hot Chip. He was also working as their musical director. He's another one of those guys that can play every instrument in the band and show people how to play their parts. I love Al. He's an amazing guy. And I toured with him. So Al, they were putting out a Hot Chip record the same year the LCD record was coming out. I remember I was just going out with this girl and saw the Coachella lineup, and it was Jay-Z and then LCD Soundsystem underneath. And I thought, oh wow, Tyler's doing really well.
Yeah.
Maybe I've never been to Coachella. Maybe I can go to this. Yeah. And because they're music enthusiasts, nerds even about like record, like not collecting, but listening and seeking things out. and gear enthusiast, and you know what I mean? Like they can really, really talk the talk. You know, and also they're just kind of like, you know, as you get more successful, there's a lot of people that just might want to, like, they get kind of thirsty around you. And they're, you know, they're a little sensitive about that sort of stuff. So actually, you're part of the story too, because I came down to San Diego and I was like, Justin, hey, I'm going out with this girl. I want to come down for Valentine's Day. Can you recommend a place?
Oh, yeah.
You recommended, do I say, like, because you recommended the Pearl.
Oh, the hotel.
The hotel. Because I was looking for a cool hotel to go to for Valentine's Day or around that. And then a restaurant. And it's Alicia.
Starlight.
Starlight.
Yeah,
So you recommended these places. And when I was down in San Diego, I got a call from Tyler going like, hey, would you be interested in trying out for LCD? We can't find a guitar player. I went, Tyler, what are you talking about? Like, you could get someone. It's like, oh, well, you know, it's hard to get to know people, or like, we don't know a lot of people, because it's not like LCD, Interpol, the Strokes were all hanging out. These are all very separate entities. Yeahs, LCD are actually closer to the same world rather than Interpol or the Strokes, or, you know what I mean? Like, people think of them as big New York bands, but there's still, like, DFA was its own scene. And I remember telling the person I was with, hey, I got asked to try out for this band. I really was starting to fall in love with her. And I was like, I would have, you know, and she was like, no, babe, you should definitely go and try out for them. And I guess so Tyler told James that I'd played in the Melvins and Unwound, and James was like, get him out here. You know what I mean? It was actually more, I think, more for the Unwound, because he liked Unwound. He knew Vern. James was hip to that sort of culture. And I went out there with a one-way ticket, and I flew out there. I practiced with them. I thought I was really, really nervous. And I was playing eighth notes with a delay, thinking like, da-da, you know, da-da. And then they were like, oh, no, you just have to play 16th notes. So, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, I was practicing for like 3 days. I was like, hey, so what's the deal? It's like, you know, I don't have a ticket back. They're like, oh, wait, you need to go back? They didn't even tell me that I got it. It was just like, oh, we're hoping that you can stay here for the next 6 weeks. So I didn't. So I went to New York, and I didn't come back until Coachella and all. But what? Oh,
and you played the Coachella that you
really
just
and I
wanted to go
stayed
to.
on tour with them for the rest of that record cycle. You know, so I played 118 shows with them.
I remember you played like a YSL thing.
Yeah,
I was like, that's
no,
kind of
I didn't play the YSL thing.
Oh.
That was when we were practicing. And that was, I was not related.
Okay.
I didn't. That would have been fun to do, just for the weirdness of it.
Yeah, I know.
Because anything sort of weird, like when I see, like Johnny Chromatics doing some weird runway thing, it's like, that's so. Because knowing where everyone comes from, it's like, that's awesome that they're having some weird experience. But James writes all the music. He gets people to come in, and it would be like a Fantomas situation. James and Patton are both Aquarians, you know, very intense. James and Mike actually strangely remind me of each other, you know, with their work ethic. They're really intense. James is, you know, a lovely, amazing person. Like, he really, really gets it. One of the first things he said to me was like, you know, after we started practicing and, you know, I was finally learning all these parts, and he was like, hey, you know, I just want, you know, I really appreciate you taking time off of your life and the music, that your own personal stuff to play in my band.
Wow.
Like, he's an amazing dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of the best guys. Like, I was going through a hard time a couple years ago, and he was writing his next record, the comeback record and all. And I realized when I put the timeline together, he was calling or checking in with me every few days or every day, or texting me and like wondering how I was doing while he was writing his new record.
Oh.
He comes from our punk rock ethics, but he got into like house and techno and like all, and you know, but we all love post punk, and that's definitely a part of it. So,
I mean, you could, when I listened to LCD, like even when I first discovered it, I was like, this is weird. Like, not something I would normally like, but I really like it because I felt like it was like punk rock, you know.
He records all the stuff himself. I mean, he has people that he works with, but he was someone that can actually visualize sound. He knows all the frequency numbers. Like he is not to be fucked with. Juan McLean, who's like a very good friend of his, who's the Juan McLean. He was in Six Finger Satellites.
Oh yeah.
James used to do front of house for Juan McLean, and Juan has always said, like, even if James couldn't write a song, he would be one of the best recording engineers in the world. You know, it's because he threw himself into the learning how to do it. You know, making, you know, doing it, reading the manuals. You know, he's someone that's inspired me to like read the manuals and learn how to do this stuff, but actually make stuff and you know, it's perfect as is. Just get it out and put it in the world. The next one will be better.
Huh.
You know?
That's
really
crazy too, because a lot of people that I work with they're like, I don't want to say anyone's name in specific, but like they won't just put it out there, you know, like you did it, but they're not sure, you know, and like, I don't know if I'd ever put out my first, second, everything, you know, like I feel like I had to put it out to learn from it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like there's people that are very encouraging people that it's better to exist as where it's at, because that will take you to another level. Yeah. Or make you question. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
But every time I put something out, I'm like, I mean, we were always talking about how we hate the Planet B record already, and it's like, but I mean, it makes you go like the next, because we started writing new shit, and you're like, the next stuff is better.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like pushing forward.
D-Styles, one of the DJs for Invisible Scratch Pickles.
I love the Scratch Pickles. Like Mac and I got turntables. Not that we were going to get into scratching, but
wait, didn't Get Hustle have turntables at one point?
Oh, Mac did have a turntable.
I remember
and he
that.
ran it through Electro-Harmonix. Electric Mistress,
which is insane. Okay, what were you gonna say though about D-Styles?
Back to what we were talking about when I was working on him with a few records, I had a bunch of, you know, like beats and stuff.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, what are you doing with these?" And I was just like, kind of like, you know, holding on to this and this. And he was very like, "No," he's like, "You made these now, like release, like let these go now, because this is who you are now, and then develop, like, you know, don't hold on to these for 2-3 years and hoping that, like, just who you are now is you should release that kind of music now and not like hold on to it, because you're going to develop as a musician and a person at the same time." So it was like that really changed the way I was, even though I still hold on to it. But
well, it's just like you continually make stuff. I make things and I work and develop ideas and all, and also because now I do scoring work,
which is so cool.
Well, I'm lucky that I get to do some projects like that. I mean, like my old way of thinking where it's like, oh, fuck that, I would never do a trap piece of music. You know what I mean? And trap is awesome, you know, sonically and all that stuff, but like, oh, that's not me. But if I get a job for a commercial to make a trap piece, like a trap track, you know, it's like, okay, I'm going to learn everything I can about like, oh, you know, multi-band compression and like focusing the sub so it's the biggest sounding sort of sub sort of thing. And this way I have a job that I get to learn more about music production and writing and all. And I am removed from having to put this out, you know, with my name and all, you know, and not because I do the best job I can for whatever. If I don't particularly listen to country music, but oh wow, okay, now I know that if I run my Telecaster with a MXR Dynacomp, I can do an approximation of sort of country picking and all. And I'm not going to release that. It's just like building up all these things that, because my noisy, harsh, sort of techno-y stuff, you know, it's like I still do my personal work and all. It doesn't take any, like learning how to do more stuff, it doesn't take anything away from your aesthetic, you know, and the things that you personally want to do. It just kind of gives you more a wider tool set to draw from.
Well, that's another thing too, is I always like, there's certain people that I play music with that are like, I'm the guitar player and I do this, or like I'm the drummer and I do this, and it's like, well, what about like not doing that? Like, what about doing some weird ass avant-garde shit that doesn't make sense, or like something that's kind of stupid, or like not taking yourself too seriously, and playing in like a techno band, or doing something that's like not not your instrument, and it's like that's where you start becoming unique in yourself, and because you're also, your references are coming from somewhere else. And it's going back to like Gabe's a good example. I remember reading this interview where they were like asking about like his drumming and hardcore and stuff, and they're like, what kind of hardcore bands do you listen to? And he's like, I don't listen to hardcore, I just play it. And I was like, fuck, that's rad. That's why you don't sound like an average hardcore drummer.
Exactly. Hybriding things. Hybriding things creates new, interesting ways of approaching it. It's like, okay, after LCD, I really learned the history of where house music came from, which is really fucking punk rock.
Totally.
In its way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is a lot like hip hop too. And,
yeah. Last night DJ saved my life. James was like, read this book.
Yeah.
Read the history of like it. It came out of, gay culture that wasn't white, that after corporate, music industry America blew up the disco records that was played in these clubs, DJs looping the same record for 32 bars and then tapping in a 909 kick underneath it and on a reel to reel. That's fucking punk rock, because you destroy a culture when you stop playing, like making the music. That's Frankie Knuckles right there. Yeah. And then Larry Levon, it's like, so learning that, like, I could, like, dance music, real dance music, because, I listen to Warp Records, but, Square Pusher is not, like, techno or house. It's its own thing. But I listen to a lot of electronic music.
Which is so crazy. I worked at this club, and it was like they played like EDM, and it was like the guy that owned the club, nice guy, and he's a millionaire or whatever, and he would just, so he like moved to New York to go to DJ school, and I was like, dude, that's the wrong thing to do, and like, and it was a gay club, and the only reason I got a job there was because he found out that I have a Wikipedia. He thought that was so cool, and I didn't know why. And then they knew I was on Jerry Springer, and so they're like, oh my God. And so they kept me working there because they don't hire straight people. And I don't really necessarily identify as like straight, or like I'm not like the straight dude, but like I fit in there. But like, anyhow, like the musical side of things, I was like, dude, everything that guy does is shit, because it's by the books, and he wants to be just like this and just like, Tiesto or whatever, and like that's fine, but like but when you're trying to be like Tiesto, like you're gonna just be like a second rate version of Tiesto. Like, what about like just being fucking weird and like doing shit on your own and figuring it out on your own, or referencing the roots?
He ran a club. He
was the owner, and he so he would book himself as the DJ, like above like real DJs, like like they'd fly in like whoever, like I don't know who's a bit popular dance house DJ, but then he would be billed on top of them, like and
I'm surprised he doesn't pay I'm surprised he doesn't pay you to ghostwrite tracks for him.
Well, I think maybe he might have done that, but he went to this. No, not him, but like I think he might have done that for other people. But he would go to like he moved to New York to go to DJ school, and then he would come back, and it was like I just said his name. We have to edit that out. His name's that was his like thing. But like, so he gets back he would be DJing. He would stop the music and be like, everybody, this is my new remix, or my new he would play my new remix of this Britney song, and you're like, fuck this.
And that's not an attractive way to get into electronic music and dance music.
And he'd play it twice in a night in a set.
Yeah. I mean, culturally, there's things that there's a disconnect from how to do things in a way that shows some sort of like character and integrity and humility. And then there's other ways about just getting the external sort of things and all. And it's weird that's what I thought that culture was about.
Yeah.
But then you look at like Jeff Mills doing 909 solos.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I didn't know that really existed. I'd heard hints of that through like reading like an Autechra interview or something, but the two people that the most influential that brought me into that world that were my guides was Nate Harrington. Did you ever know Nate Harrington? He was a smell kid. He was, when No Age and all those bands were coming up, he was the first person that of our scene that was listening to electronic music and like real club music, and got into the history of it. And
so like he was just someone that would go to the smell, or did he
grew
like...
up in Mars Volta culture.
Okay,
you know what I mean? And then he was friends with No Age, and he worked at Family Books. And he's like, oh yeah, I started listening, and this must have been 2003 or something like that. And he started getting he's maybe in his early 30s now. He was like a young kid, like totally put himself out there. And he started exploring that world of stuff. And Tyler from LCD and Chick, he's the one that would send me tracks to listen to. It's like, oh yeah, you got to check out this Larry Levan mix from the Paradise Garage. And like the one thing that I did like was acid house stuff. I liked the psychedelic elements of that, and I knew a little bit about that sort of stuff before. And my friend, when I was building my synth collection, let me borrow his TB303 for a long time, and I got a converter. It was so exciting to run, a Logic, making a kick on my modular with the 303. It was so much fun, and then running through distortion pedal. But I liked acid stuff, but I was not hip to. I thought I would hate house music. I would think that techno didn't have any character. This is just my old way of thinking. And ultimately, it's just throwing yourself into it and listening to it more, and just like, when I joined LCD, I took every piece of music that I'd ever downloaded from the internet, whether it was the Stooges or Pussy Galore or, bands that I'd played in, and I threw 30 gigs away of music. I got rid of all my iTunes, like everything. I sell vinyl and all, but like I got rid of everything that I became so familiar with, and I started filling up with like music, the history of like dance music, club music, and Strictly Rhythm, tracks, just all like the origins of those sorts of techno and house culture. And so it was quite it was quite a change and all, but in that whole year, it's like, I was like, oh, here we are having dinner, in Spain with Busy P and the Justice Guys and Soul Wax.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It was
wow.
so crazy, and, I mean, not until like I was in, I would have to go to Pat and go like, hey, what's the deal with these guys? It's like, oh yeah, it's Dave and Steph. They're good friends of ours. You should listen to the Night Versions record.
Oh yeah.
The records before that, they were like these, rock guys, but Dave Sardi produced them. You know what I mean? Like then they got into electronic music.
Yeah.
And I started putting like, oh wow, you can be into punk rock culturally. You can have played in weird rock bands your whole life, and still figure out a way to be a part of this.
That's so funny, because I feel like, and I think Luke and I have discussed this a lot too, like, because the word, or like the term punk rock is so, it's like just,
I know.
It sucks. But punk ethics, like the punk is in everything, it's in hip hop, it's in fucking,
Absolutely.
It's in like some country music, it's in whatever. But it's funny because even today on, like on social media, like someone was talking about Tijuana, and like no one's punk enough to play in Tijuana anymore, huh? And I was like, actually, I'm gonna go tomorrow night and see Dave Scott Stone play.
Oh, really?
And
Awesome.
he was like, fuck yeah, and he knew who you were and stuff. He's one of, and I was like. And it was weird that he like made that comment, and I think it's weird when people do that and complain or whatever on social media. But regardless, I threw your name out there thinking like, this guy's gonna either just ignore me or whatever, or like not know who you were, or not think you were like punk rock. And he was like, fuck yeah, and like, I mean, I'm sure he'll be at the show tomorrow, and that's just something in itself right there, because I mean, I don't know who would think like, oh, Dave Stone's playing, it's gonna be punk rock,
Well, yeah, yeah.
but it's gonna be punk, like it's gonna ethically,
Well, the electronic stuff that I do feels, when people write some of the bands that I've played in before, it's not gonna sound like LCD, and I've met people. I'm sure you understand this. It's really hard to talk about things that you've done before, because it'd be very misleading and all.
But that's the thing is, like, for me, when I saw you perform at the Planet B night that we had you play at, it was like, it seemed like LCD, and it seemed like Melvins.
To me, it feels more Melvins. You know, it's like really, because I want it to be like sort of one riff that goes over everything. And the thing that I like, the funnest thing is I start with like, I write drum parts. I have a 909, and I'll write 4 different, because you can put 4 different groupings of 909 things together. So I'll write 4 groups of 909s, like sort of like an intro, sort of a main body sort of thing, something bigger, and sort of a breakdown. So I have those things go, and then I'll record that into Logic. I don't know if we should get into my whole I don't care about talking about it. Is this too nerdy and all, or should I talk about it?
This
Okay.
whole podcast is very nerdy.
Okay.
I love it. It's fucking great.
Yeah, because I go about a long way. I don't like write in Ableton and all this sort of stuff. I like writing on the 909. I love the way it feels. It's very intuitive. I can open up and close hi-hats and all, and I can jam with it.
So it's like essentially like acoustic. I mean, not acoustic, but like you're playing the instruments.
Well, my MPC, well, okay, so after I write the 4 different sections of one bank of the 909, because I don't get too further from that, I then send that information into Logic. So I record the MIDI information from the 909 into Logic, and then the 909 clocks are really sloppy, so I quantize it, you know? And so I get it on a grid, and then I take the MIDI information from those sections. Sometimes I'll do things like, okay, I'm going to take, this goes on too long. Okay, I'm going to take out this rim shot for 4 bars, bring it back in 4 bars. Because ultimately, I want to write something with my drum beats. And this is the fantasy for anyone that programs drum machines. I want to make something with just the drums. If there's no other instruments, it would take you on a journey, you know? And with the 909, you got 10 sounds to do that in. But and so after I do that, I'll listen to just the drums of the 909, you know, over to see if I want to change it. So I make the arrangements after listening to it. And then I then I put it into the MPC 1000, and then I clock it to the 909. So I send the MIDI information that's originally it's from the 909, put into Logic, tighten up everything, because when things are sloppy, it gets people, they're less hypnotic about things. But I like a solid kick that just like, you know, very mechanical. I mean, I play with swing settings and like on like hi-hats, or you know, but I don't get too complicated. I get all breakbeat, Derek Basic, who's a genius, Aphex Twin and stuff like that on it. And then I put the 909, so I get it back in the real world coming out of the 909. And then I run my modular to kind of create other things. I'll play like a modular line on the MPC pads because I want to play it there and not on a keyboard. I want to have a very MPC sort of feel. And sometimes it's very like repetitive and all, and then I'll record sub bass from the 909, usually a self-oscillating filter that's pitched and all. So the sub bass is actually coming. The whole thing is my live set is all the sounds are generated from the modular or the 909. That's it. I don't like design something in massive and throw it in there and all. I have used some CR78 sorts of sounds before because I just love the CR78, or I've used some sort of blocks and all, but you know, all the synth stuff's all from the modular, even if it's not.
If you saw how I do it, you would probably want to bang your head against the wall.
There's something about doing things the long way.
I do it all the long way.
Yeah, because you get into detail of that, more, you know?
Like, my tracks look crazy.
Well, that's funny how you're picturing it, or how you're painting it, because when I come in here and we're working on Planet B stuff, there's like just an assload of tracks, and I'm like, what in the fuck? And then he'll like isolate something, and I'm like, dude, what is that? That sounded so cool. And in the mix, you don't hear it. And I'm like, you got to get rid of something because that's the jam, you know, or like something that you would never even know existed.
I build, and then like the construction of the song is actually deconstructing the song.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at, because I hear just so much, and then writing the song is just it's like peeling it, and then you're like, oh, here's the song, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where the freedom and detail of electronic music is and all, you know. And like at some point, you know, in Los Angeles for me, coming back from tours, you know, it's like, and trying to play with different people at this stage in my life and all, I'm either going to be playing with, you know, people that are kind of doing it for the first time, because that's more like the energy of the personality that I like. But trying to like put a band together and getting a bunch of people to practice all at the same time, you know, I mean, all of that stuff, like, it's really, you know, it's hard to do, and it asks a lot of other people, you know. So that's why, you know, being self-contained, you know.
So you're just only playing by yourself now? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if someone asked me to play with them, like, there's this, my friend, I recently have, like, I didn't know this whole world of, like, Giant Drag and the Icarus line. I've met the Icarus, Joe from the Icarus line now, but I never saw that band in the day. I know that you're in that documentary or something like that.
Oh yeah, Retox played in it.
Okay, yeah. But you know, it's like I need Retox and all the bands that you did, but I didn't know that band at all. I also didn't know Giant Drag. Everyone I know, and they're very popular bands. I totally get that. But
there was a lot of Icarus beef with our community or our world, because they like stole one of Joey's synthesizers.
What?
Yeah, from LeShock. And Joe got his ass handed to him.
Whoa, I have no idea about
but it was someone else in the band. It wasn't Joe, but I don't think it was Joe. But I like Joe, and I mean, I think it was fucked, and the kid got, Todd beat him up. It was some show, I think LeShock played and the Locust played, and I feel like, I don't know what anyhow, Icarus Line played, and at the time, LeShock, whoever was playing, I don't know if it was Daryl or Kundo, someone was playing synth, and they were using Joey's, one of his synthesizers.
Probably the Juno 60.
Maybe.
Nerd talk.
It was, but I don't know if it was that even. I don't know, because I think the Locust was still using that. Regardless, though, like, the synth went missing, and so everyone's like, "Where the fuck is it?" You know, looking around, and like the Icarus Line came. It was at the Glass House. Icarus Line came to the show in a station wagon, and they packed all their gear in, and there's windows, and so Todd's like, "What's that synthesizer in the window of your car, and you don't have a keyboard player?" And they just fucking got his ass beat.
Wow, I had no idea. And that, like, again, I'm very removed from that scene. I met Joe actually a handful of times.
I really like Joe, and I've known him since like he was in the Kinker Sores and whatever band was before that, like back when he was like in a ska band. You know, like, I mean, he's a cool dude.
Yeah. Well, Annie and him used to go out and stuff like that, and I don't know. I mean, Annie and I have a mutual friend, our friend Caitlin, and like, I guess I met Annie about 10 months ago, and out of the blue, she was like, "Hey, you play synth, right?" And she's like, "Hey, I'm doing this. My old band, Giant Drag, is doing a reunion show. What would you think about? Would you play synth bass with us?" And I was like, and I didn't realize I knew about like as many songs that I did. I'd heard them and stuff like that, and I'd not played in the band in a long time, and in a band. I'd been doing shows. Like, I think I probably played like Acid Varsity maybe the week before I did that, which is in San Diego. And so I've never played synthesizer, like that sort of piano synthesizer in a band ever before. I had no experience with that. All my synth playing is like
modular.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few LCD songs where I went over and played like a section on one of their songs, because there's so many parts and layers, and we are all multi-instrumentalists. But so Annie asked me to play, and I said, sure, why not? You know, headlining Echo Park Rising one night at the Echoplex. And so we practiced for like 3 days, and that was the whole thing. The person that they were going to do things with bailed, or something didn't happen with them, so she needed find someone that day or that week. So we practiced a couple of, I think it was 3 or 4 practices, and it's, you know, again, I didn't feel like I had the confidence. I thought it would be a little bit too ivory tickling, you know, and it really wasn't at all. And I brought my SH-101 and my Moog Taurus.
Oh yeah.
And it was fun, you know. I mean, she's quite a character, and she's a friend, and she's a little sister to me, you know. And it, you know, it went fine, but you know, so occasionally, like when something weird comes up, you know, it would be fun to do something that feels right. I'm not against playing in bands, but until then, I take up what's in front of me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I was jamming in this project with the bass player Duran Duran over the fall before he got busy with Duran Duran.
Wow.
And that guy, and with Paul Behan, who you know from down here, who brought us together to work on a soundtrack.
What was Paul playing?
Paul was playing drums.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was a
Damn,
drummer.
I forgot about that.
And Paul hooked us up because John needed to record a soundtrack someplace. And I shot a little video of I'm giving a monologue.
Yeah, I saw a snippet on your social media, the soundtrack that you did, right?
Yeah, and we did a little.
Awesome.
Well, I got hired just to be the engineer, and then John asked me to contribute some things, and I broke out after 8 years the harsh noise instruments. I was getting my little feedback box, that controlled feedback box, and contact mics, and John. You know, great dude. I mean, there's people that play brick by brick in front of 10 people that have more of a rock star attitude than that dude.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That dude he's an amazing, amazing human being.
Wow.
You know? And
from Duran.
Yeah, I mean, he's an amazing bass player. He's not I remember I would do some recording, and this is all fun stuff. You know, it's probably not going to exist in the world and all, but maybe it'll at some point and all, but I'm sitting there and he's doing this amazing sort of bass line, and it's I mean, that's sort of fun, you know what I mean? And it's you know, I'm up for like sort of interesting projects that kind of like challenge me to do things that I don't do, and you know, get me to be less me, you know what I mean? Or expand into this sort of new thing.
But maybe less you is actually you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
Well,
you're
exploring.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have a pretty eclectic. I know you don't want to say like resume, but it is an eclectic resume.
It's because ultimately, when it comes down to it, I love music. You know, just love music, and I'm really, I don't know.
But do you hate music too? I mean, because
I've quit so many times.
No, I mean, I hate certain music. I'm like, oh, I hate this shit because it sounds junky or crap or like weak or like lazy or something.
Well, you know, when you start recording stuff, you start hearing music, you start listening to things that, you know, you can remove yourself from the aesthetic or the content and just hear like the quality of it. Like, I don't like Steely Dan, but every you know, Steely Dan, Aja is like one of those records, if you record music, you have to listen to. So I listen to it and I can't stand those songs, but
I think like sincerity is something that I can hear like something in a song and it doesn't seem sincere. Therefore, like I hate that shit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can definitely feel like
I hate messages in music more if I don't relate to it. Like I can appreciate sounds and movement of music, but a lot of times, like with reggae music, the bass line I can get with, even a lot of the drums I can get with, but when they start singing and what they're talking about, even like it's to me, it's
you're talking about the religious aspects.
Yeah, that too.
I do hate reggae music.
Like,
actually,
I'm like, oh, why did you start singing? I love like instrumental music or like minimal thing, if you're not like talking about something.
But maybe there's innovative reggae music, right? Because I mean, to me, I feel like reggae music's based on one sort of chord progression. It's like one thing. Like there's one reggae song to me, but maybe like that's. I mean, my mom says that about everything I play. It all sounds the same, you know. It's like, okay, I get it. So maybe I just sound like my mom when it comes to reggae music.
If reggae had just the drums and bass, I would the skank and the keys and the modern reggae now is like. But I love the love. I'll edit that out. But the bass and the drums, a lot of the drums, not the older drums, are just so good. Or like the old Jamaican recordings, they didn't have like a lot of that, like King Tubby.
I was gonna say I could listen to King Tubby.
The sound
all
system
I know.
part of it is so great, but then they start singing, and I'm like,
well,
But maybe it's like
the Congos. I like the Congos singing and stuff like that. But culturally, that was the whole thing. Justin Strasberg turned me on to that, and it's like, oh, you should really take a listen to this. And you know, sometimes if you trust you have people to curate like the better parts of it for you.
Sure.
I like everything else this guy does and what he creates, but he likes this thing that's removed, or this person is completely removed from this sort of stuff I can't stand. There's good stuff within everything.
Yeah.
It's having a guide to bring you
Sure.
into it that knows where you're coming from. Like I have a friend that currently because I also like I try and help people learn how to record stuff and mix things. So I have a friend, he came from the sort of like, he was on the Sub Pop band in the 90s, and he's now like a production designer. He's getting back into music. He's got some nice pieces of gear because he could get good stuff. And he's like, oh, teach me about house and techno. Like, what should I listen to? And it's like, I like where you're coming from. I like what you do personally with your music. And this way I can kind of help guide him into, it's like, oh, okay, this is what acid house is about. You know what I mean? It's, you know, he's like, but so repetitive, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, you have to understand this is for like being on a dance floor.
Yeah.
You know, you're a little buzzed. You've been dancing for hours and this comes on. And these sorts of sounds, a distorted TB303 line, it's actually really exciting. It can be,
It's the timbre of a certain sound that can create
yeah.
some effect. Yeah.
And so if you've been writing like sort of like Cold War gothy sort of rock stuff in the 90s, like it's a really, really hard thing to get into. Like for me, I don't listen to a lot of reggae, but my contempt that I once had for it changed over time and all. You know, there's a lot of like cheesy reggae as there is like a lot of cheesy metal or
Sure, yeah,
you know what I mean?
I mean, when people say reggae, they think of Bob Marley, and it's just like
Yeah,
the guy's a homophobic womanizer dick.
Yeah. But yeah, Could You Be Loved has some of the most badass like dun, 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 like that. What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The rhythm track to that is so
totally like Bob Marley is the same thing with the lyrics and all that. But when you hear his rhythm section,
So that's what you meant by the message. Like, that's the part you hate.
Yeah, no, it's like I know.
Because you can sing like "No Woman, No Cry" because you're a womanizer and you beat your wife and you have
or
like a bunch of illegitimate
reggae's
children.
Like this big loving thing, and then a lot of like.
So you're but you're curating electronic music to your friend who was on Sub Pop is sort of like I don't know, like someone curating. Who'd you reference before? Like Justin telling you to like listen to this kind of reggae, sound the same thing. Because they asked the right person. Because if your friend asked the guy that I worked for, like, what's good music, he's gonna just go listen to like third-rate Britney remixes.
It's really like finding someone that if you don't like something,
probably go look into it further.
Find someone that you trust that knows about it. You know,
because then
if you want to spend your time on the planet doing that,
I
which
agree.
is all limited, but
because then you can get that one little aspect of it and then open it up. The same thing like with me with reggae, I hated every little aspect of it, but like Matt was like, listen to if it wasn't for dub and like them making dubs, or like the King Tubby whole aspect of it, like
Fisher Space Expander, the reverb.
Yep, totally.
Nerd talk.
But going back to like, because he just referenced his partner who at the studio, Matt, who's like he's into reggae, but like he's a punk, like.
Totally.
I mean, shit. And even like he was in a hip hop band in like the late 90s that 31G was going to put out, you know. I mean, it's like like that in itself is pretty weird or whatever, you know, like so I mean, I think that it's where you're getting your I don't know, whoever's helping you
it's like
in the right, pointing you in the direction.
You have somebody you trust introduce you to something you hate, maybe.
And that's I mean, I think there's something kind of beautiful about like you having it's almost a spiritual shift in something. If you can come to like see something good in something that you had contempt for, I think in general the world would be a better place with those sorts of principles, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like, how do you have compassion for someone that is completely against like everything you're about? And like, okay, you have to take some understanding of what their life experience was to get into this place, you know? We're not getting into politics. But yeah, it's really, I didn't know that about Bob Marley. What a bummer. It seems so non-Aquarius too.
Yeah, I mean, also too, like, I mean, Rastafarians are homophobic, and like that's kind of a bummer. And
Chi-Chi Man, that's like homosexual Chi-Chi Man.
Oh yeah.
They're like,
or like if you're a Rasta, you can't your wife can't sleep in the same bed as you if she's menstruating, and she can't cook your food for you if she's menstruating.
It's like fundamentalist stuff.
All religions.
Yeah. Well, I guess so.
Well, I'm not. You know, it's like, hey, those people, they have to live with their circumstances, what they're choosing to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
Like.
Well, I mean, maybe if you're born into it culturally, it's what happens.
It's hard to break out. You know, it's like one of my best friends growing up, his family was really involved in the Mormon church, and his dad actually became a very conservative senator when he graduated. I mean, they're big, you know, and like he's actually made some steps, and he's spoken out against, you know, he's married with like 8 kids, you know, but he doesn't like
Marley.
He does not like, you know, he's spoken out about it, the Mormon church not letting gay people maybe practice in there.
Well, in the late 70s, black people were the devil still.
Yeah,
so that's that's in our lifetime.
So it's slowly, we'd like to think that slowly generations
get their shit together.
Even if my friend is still a very devout Mormon, you know, he's progressive, you know, but it takes a while for all dinosaurs to die out.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
And that's why these days, I thought for a long time the dinosaurs were dying out. And, you know, there's been evidently a bunch of little hatchlings. You know?
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Okay.
It's been great.
We're almost on 2 hours on this podcast.
This conversation, it was unnoticeable as far as being a podcast.
But before, if you guys can continue it, before we end this, can you introduce yourself?
Hi. Hi. My name is David Scott Stone. Been friends with Justin for 20 years. And Luke, I just met you.
All right, that was the Dave Scott Stone episode 12 of the Cult and Culture podcast. Thanks for listening in. I hope you all get a chance to check out our previous podcasts. You can hear them on the 31G SoundCloud profile or on iTunes under 31G's podcast. Yeah, I don't know. Check out Dave's catalog of work. It's pretty expansive. And thanks for tuning in.
Later.